Today, I'm taking my first steps to becoming a tech marine and learning how to solder. My name's Angela and welcome to Hobby Night. I have been wanting to add lighting and other electronic effects to my wargaming terrain and vehicles for ages. I see a bunch of other people online doing this and I think it looks so gosh darn cool. However, I lack one key skill that is required to even make electronics work in miniatures, and that is the ability to solder. Now today, I'm going to be correcting this. I'm going to be getting over my fear of soldering because good Lord, I have been way too afraid to try this. I was worried about burning myself. I was worried about my hands being maybe a little too unsteady for what seemed like somewhat delicate work, but I bought two kits from a company called Alpenglow. These kits are pins that are designed to light up. They're on PCB boards and require soldering in order to connect the lights and all the other electronic components so that it can actually work. And today I'm going to be building them both up. One is a Stormcloud, one is a Coffin. They're super cute. I absolutely love them. And I'm gonna be getting over my fear of soldering so that in the future, when I'm working on cool terrain projects, I can drill out some of those lights and actually add true LEDs in there and make them light up. I just think that's gonna be so cool. So without further ado, let me go ahead and grab my soldering kit, everything that I'll need to get going, and we'll get to work. I wanted to begin with the easier of the two pins to build, and that is the Stormcloud. Now the Stormcloud comes with a switch, 3 lights, and then a battery pack that needs to be attached via soldering. And because I'm brand new at this and I've never done any soldering before in my life, I'm going to opt to actually follow the instructions and start with the switch. Now things start really smoothly. I get the switch into place, it goes in pretty easily to the PCB board, and then I start the actual soldering process, and my solder is not quite heated up enough, I don't think. So I'm being a little impatient. When I first started, because the tip that I was using wasn't actually tinned, I wasn't getting a good flow. And when I finally did get a decent flow, I completely overflowed and actually caused 2 of the pins on the switch to connect, which meant that I had to pull out the whisk that I had, or not whisk, the wick that I had, and use that to get some of that solder away. But because I was actually having a little bit of heating issues with my soldering iron, which I wasn't sure if it was because I was turning it off and on or what was happening, I was a little concerned about this. Eventually, I did reheat the solder and was able to wick it away and clean out those 2 points so that they weren't connecting anymore and possibly going to cause a short. But I continued to have soldering issues as I went on. Eventually, what I decided to do is I just decided to leave the iron on. I was going to make sure that it just stayed heated, and while I was getting things set up for the next step, for example, the lights, I would leave the soldering iron on, and that seemed to work. I got the lights and they connected really easily. I was feeling very confident. And then I got to the last section that I needed to attach, which was the battery pack, and I started to have issues again. Now, thankfully, I did manage to get it into place, and I actually thought I got some of my best mounts on that particular moment. But then afterwards, the iron just wasn't heating up anymore. I don't know if it went through a cycle where it cooled down because it got overheated and it was protecting itself from just frying, or if I did in fact fry the soldering iron, but it completely stopped working on me and I wasn't going to be able to use it for the coffin. But thankfully, I had a second soldering iron on hand and we're going to use that. But before we actually get to the coffin, I specifically need to test and see if all the lighting that I put on to this board for my beautiful little Stormcloud actually works. And as soon as I get the battery into place, because the switch is already set to on, those lights start going and I am absolutely thrilled. I am so pleased that it all works. And now we can work on the coffin, which is a little bit more complicated. Hey guys. I just wanted to jump into the video to remind you to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, especially if you're enjoying the content that you find here. And if you're into the spicier side of the hobby, well, my Only Fanatics VIP page is currently 50% off through the end of the month for new subscribers. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, use the link in the video description below, and I hope to see you there. Now let's go ahead and get back to the video. You might be asking yourself, what makes the coffin more complicated than the Stormcloud? Well, the coffin uses resistors, and the resistors are there because we have 6 smaller LEDs, and our battery would overpower those without them. So I'm going to go ahead and attach the resistors first, just like the instructions give me some guidance on. And this goes so much smoother than my previous attempt. Now I go ahead and I tin my tip on my new soldering iron. Before I get to work, I add some flux down to make sure that everything flows super easily. Speaking of flux, this is the step that just kept tripping me up. You see, I'd either end up putting the flux on after I'd already put the components into place, which just made it a lot more difficult, or sometimes I'd even get to soldering before putting the flux down. So I'm going to be using my experience with flux to try to remind myself in the future when I'm working on my projects to slow down, take my time, and really go through each step as appropriate. And that really helps me get the solder actually melting and moving onto the pins exactly how I want them. I progressed through this entire coffin with so much more ease than I did the Stormcloud, simply because I was being a lot more patient and letting my iron heat completely up, and I just feel like I had a much better flow. And now going forward, I'm feeling like I can do this on my miniatures as well. So once I get everything connected to the coffin as it needs to be, the resistors, all 6 of the lights, clipping all of the excess pins off, and then attaching the switch as well as the battery pack, we're ready to test and see if this one works as well. Now this time when I put the battery in, things don't immediately turn on and I panic. I'm like, oh shit, did I do something wrong? But no, it's actually just that the switch got switched to off and it wasn't being powered. So as soon as I flipped it to on, the lights started going and I was thrilled yet again. Both of my pins work, they both light up, and I have so much more confidence now going into soldering in the future. And here they are, my beautiful pins that I now have successfully soldered and made light up. I cannot tell you how cool I think it is that I was able to do this. I know soldering may not seem like a super difficult task or anything like that, but to me, it was incredibly scary, and actually going through this process has given me so much confidence to go forward and actually do some of the cool lighting projects that I've seen other people do in their terrain, in vehicles. Who knows, maybe this is going to lead to me like fixing up my own like retro game system or something like that. Who knows? I don't know where this is gonna take me, but now that I actually have it under my belt, that I feel confident in going forward with it, that I'm not scared of it anymore, I'm just, yes, I wanna do more. I wanna solder, not everything, but a lot more. And especially put some lights in not only my scale model tanks, but my wargaming terrain, my wargaming vehicles. One day I might have future aspirations to actually make a motorized Warhammer vehicle. Wouldn't that be cool? And put lights in it and just have it be like fully motor controlled, and just like, there's so many things now that I feel like I can move into and actually start exploring, that I have soldering under my belt. So I'm really glad that I did this. Thank you to the Chaos Cultist for encouraging me to do this. He's been trying to get me to solder for like 4 years, and I've just been too terrified to do it. But no longer, and I'm so happy about that. I also want to give a huge thank you to my patrons and my YouTube members for supporting the content here on the channel and making it so that we can keep making these videos. Without your guys' help, we just would not be doing this, so thank you very, very much. I have been Angela, and I hope you have a wonderful hobby night.
Wait, you got the kit 2 years ago?
That is correct, yes, I got the kit 2 years ago.
Have we mentioned how you have too many projects going at once, Angela? And maybe a 2-year backlog might be a little much. Have you shrunk the backlog in the 2 years? Angela, look at me. Angela, have you shrunk the backlog? Angela, have you shrunk the backlog?
No.
Okay.